Okay, we are recording. So thank you all of you for joining this call. The thing here that I would like to discuss is what we are doing for this performance problem in the aggregation of storage usage for namespaces.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing is that we have this. Let's start with sharing the screen maybe so that we can do this. So share. Okay. So let me go here. Okay. So I would like to start with this as an example, so that we can talk about a bit more about the problem that we have.
Right.
So we started discussing doing this namespace migration for tagging the root namespace, but in the meantime, my plan was to start working on the next part of it, and I said, I just need the aggregated data. I can just do a slow query and have the object, and then when we will be ready, I will replace it. So this was my starting point. But then, because I was reviewing Myra's work, I said, is this query really too slow for using it in Fresh? So that's why I brought this merge request. And now I put the explain here, and you just linked me the explain, which is that things here. And from what I understand here is this now, that okay, so exclusives means only this node, inclusive means this node and everything below.
Yeah.
And this is just a rows X is if the planner underestimated or overestimated the number of row returned by it. So that's the thing. And then it's the number of row that it returns and the loops. Okay.
Yeah.
So from what I do understand here is that this part, line number 6, is taking a lot of time. But the reason I think is that it's because this is going through, is looping over all the projects that we have, which is 504 here in this case, and is matching with the project statistics.
Yeah.
Because we have to sum it, and this can change.
Right. Yeah. So the thing here is the reason you see these loop counts is because the second node is a nested loop.
Okay.
And that's in this case, I believe, because we do a sum with the group by, it will essentially loop over every row and aggregate them. So the in this particular case, most of the time spent just fetching that data, because summing the actual numbers is very fast. And in particular, you can see it shows the I/O timings where it spends about 160 milliseconds reading. Now, depending on depending on a lot of things, that may or may not have to be read from disk. In this case, it seems to have been read from disk, but if you then probably rerun it, it's much faster because it's in memory.
Okay.
The tricky thing here is with this particular plan, I'm not sure, and that's also why in the note I said, like, I'm not sure if this can be improved. Because if you have, say, 5 projects, it's going to be fast, but if you have 5,000, then of course, simply because it has to process more data, it's going to take longer. The only optimization, if I look at this, I could think of is with node 4, it uses the routes to filter for subroutes. And there what it basically does, it uses an index to get the initial set of data and then filters out that with, I think it's this, it filters it out by source type, okay.
Is this part, Is this
node 4. The thing is there, though, you could optimize it, but apparently only 8 milliseconds is spent there, so it's not really worth it.
That's the point to say that the way we are fetching the project right now is really fast.
Yeah.
So even if we tag namespaces, maybe we'll be faster, but is this a win? I mean,
no. So here, this is So normally for me, a query that is slow is something that takes, let's say, more than 20 milliseconds. And that's a very small number, but it's mostly because when we look at web requests, we typically have 50 to 100 SQL queries. And so if everyone takes more than it adds up very quickly.
Sure.
And I think for a while we had this sort of goal that per request we spend, I think, at most 200 milliseconds in SQL. I don't know if you still meet those goals. In this case, I think this is a query that would run in Sidekick, right?
Exactly. That's
Right.
the point.
And would this run daily or like every time these statistics change?
Okay, the thing, we followed your suggestion. So the thing is that when something change, it will be scheduled for, let's say, 3 hours in the future. Right. And all the subsequent changes in the same time frame would be not recorded.
Oh, right.
So the suggestion that I made here as an improvement is following the same pattern that we are doing for the project statistics, which is get leads on Redis, 15 minutes leads, we can change the number. So update now and update at the end of the leads. And so everything in between, don't update it, because so you have, it can be a current data or at 15 minutes.
Right. So in that case, I would say that this time is probably sufficient. In particular, I think that since namespace will change quite a bit, some of this data will probably be cached more or less most of the time. There is the problem. I don't remember if we enforce a limit of projects per, basically per root namespace. I don't think we do.
Yeah, it's per group, but I don't think we enable it.
Right. Because I think
admin can set a limit.
All right, because I think that would at least allow us to sort of put an upper limit on how long this will take.
Yeah.
Because I can see somebody creating like a namespace with like, I don't know, a few hundred sub namespace or whatever, and then like thousands of projects.
We have one of this. I mean, it's why we started all this optimization thing, because you were looking at the production database and you found that there's a couple of big outliers there.
So the thing there, though, is since it is triggered only when there's a state change, even then, I think 200 milliseconds or whatever it is fairly reasonable. And so I would say probably for now, I think this is good enough, because I don't think anybody can come up with a better way.
Okay.
And I think the only better way is if you do this approach we initially thought of, like where it's incrementally updated per project, but it gets super complicated.
Yeah. I was thinking about building some kind of with Postgres table inheritance. Now that we dropped MySQL, we can build some kind of journal by days, so that at the end of the day you sum everything. So you store the delta as a log line, and once in a day or twice a day you just consume it and drop it. So that
and I think there you end up with the same problem because you have to simply group by the number of events or whatever you like to call it. But if it's limited, every 15 minutes and everything in between gets merged together, that should be fine.
Okay.
I expect we might have to tweak the intervals a little bit and stuff like that.
Sure.
I personally would be fine if you just do one update per day, but I think some of the other people, like sales and such, whatever, they might not be happy with that. But I would probably start with ideally updating less often than more often. Simply because let's say we deploy this and we update the statistics at most once every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, I think we have, let's say, 4 million namespaces. Now, of course, not all of them are going to be changed all the time, but I suspect there's going to be quite a few changes.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing this on feature flag per group, so that we can enable this, let's say, on GitLab, on our GitLab org namespace, because we use it a lot.
Yeah.
And take a look at how it behaves, because we have pressure there, but we are just affecting our own stuff. So
exactly.
Kind of experiment.
that would be very good. But I would then also maybe start with updating, say, at most once an hour, because that's still fairly reasonable. Yeah, I'm wondering that might be overkill if we could somehow change that interval with the application settings. That way, the idea is there that if we find that, for example, an hour is still too often, we can just change it without having to basically deploy a new version.
Sure.
But whether that should be in the YAML file.
I mean, we can, if we are doing this behind a feature flag, in any case, we can just set the number in feature flag as well. And even if it's a UI, UX, and whatever it is, it's not line. I mean, we are running an experiment. And
no, exactly. It's I think application settings might be overkill, because I would prefer that we provide a value that works for pretty much everybody. And frankly, we're probably the only one who's actually going to use this. I don't think we have, we can set values in feature flags and retrieve those. They're all Booleans, as far as I know.
I think,
I think you can set a percentage of actors. I'm not sure if it would be useful.
So you're kind of tweaking that percentage just to say between 1 hour and 1 day.
Right.
Okay. That's what we did with the Auto DevOps thing. We just released it with 5%, and then we were incrementally adding it.
Right, but so in this case, it's not so much the percentage of users. I mean, that would be a separate thing. But I think, let's say we enable this for GitLab org, and we say once per hour, and we find out, that even is too much. Ideally, we want to be able to very quickly change that setting without having to go through the deploy process. So I think if you do it in a YAML file, we probably have to start messing with Omnibus, which is not ideal.
No.
If you do an application settings, we have to create a UI field and stuff for something that people probably will never change. Plus, you need an admin to change it, which is a little annoying.
We can write it in Redis and just say...
That would actually... I guess what you could do is provide a default interval, and at least for this period where it uses a feature flag, you do a fetch from Redis, and you say, hey, if that key exists, we just use whatever value it has. Yeah,
I was thinking something like this, so that we can change it, but we with the plan to remove this part by when we...
That actually sounds reasonable, because that you can just do from a Rails console. I think that's probably the most straightforward we can do. The alternative is that we add the column to application settings, but don't create a UI for it. But then it's kind of weird, because we then have to move in, so we have a migration in the code base.
Exactly, there's a migration. We add the column, and
then I like the idea of using Redis for that.
Okay, good. So let me check. So I actually think that this solves all the question that we have. I don't know, because we can add, maybe Myra already did, I don't remember, because we discussed it. We have the updated at in the aggregated statistics. So from the UI point of view, we can say this is the number, but it's updated to that hour, because this is a UX problem. Then UX will tell us to frame the story, because for performance reasons, we can just update on time. So, and that's one part of the story. And even if this query is not the most performant right now, but we can start using it, measure how is it behaving, and improve it later.
No, exactly.
Not touching namespaces now, because it actually, as we said, this is not the slow part of this query.
No, I think this query, since it doesn't run that often, should be fine. And I think, should we have cases where we run this too often or too many times in parallel, you can always increase the interval or maybe spread it out more, where you say, by default, we enforce an interval of 1 hour, but if you have this many jobs, we might increase it for some. You can go very far with that.
Okay. So I think we reached an agreement. So
Yeah.
thank everybody for joining this call, mostly Yorick for spending time with us explaining all the details. And yeah, have a nice one.
All right. Hey, see ya.
Bye.
Thanks.